Got a good question from Jose, who's having trouble with his guillotine choke. So he said he's able to get the guillotine choke, but he can't quite finish it because he thinks that he doesn't have the depth for it, and he's wanting to get this corrected before his next tournament. So Jose, first off, thanks for the question, dude, and you definitely want to get this corrected if you're planning to use it, because I think that, like in tournaments anyway, because I think we've all been to a tournament where you go there and you're watching and someone gets a guillotine choke. You might see this in fights a lot of times where a person will get the choke and they don't quite have it, and then they'll just like start squeezing and arching their back, and all of a sudden the person's heads pop out, and then they're just gassed, right? Their arms are like jello, and they're just done. That's it. So you don't want that to happen to you. So I'm going to give you 2 tips that I think would, and again, I normally do them on the mat, but these are simply like movement adjustments on your part that I think should be easy enough to go through the video. So the first tip that I would share with you is the depth, right? You said you weren't getting good depth, and that's typically from what I've seen from as a coach, and also what I've seen from my own experience, because I know that I was a white belt too, and as soon as my hand would get up under the neck, I got excited, right? And instead of continuing to get the depth on it, I would stop and start to squeeze. And that's the biggest problem that I see people have initially with their guillotine chokes and even rear naked chokes, right? Because what happens is, you feel like you got a kill grip, right? So your hand's going under, and as soon as you get about mid forearm, people stop, right? They're like, oh, I got it. And then they start to squeeze, right? Or if it's a rear naked choke, they start to like try to get their finish, okay? The problem with that is, one, is you're not really getting the carotids. Again, if you think about any submission, if you're having trouble with it, you just have to sort of reverse engineer it. You got to think, okay, what is the objective? To cut off carotids, okay? And then you can look at what you're doing. Am I doing that? And then if not, well, how could I do that? And so likewise with this, a lot of times people get shallow and they're not cutting off the carotids. They're either doing a trach, or sometimes you'll, like with a rear naked choke, people will face crank. You might get a submission, but that's not ideal. That's not perfect technique. We want to try to get that perfect technique when we're drilling and training, especially with our partners. So what we're going to do, instead of like stopping here, is you want to send this hand sailing through. And this is going to require a little bit of a shoulder movement. So it's not just arm, right? It's here. With a rear naked choke, you send the shoulder flying through. And if you think about the difference, right? Like if this was a rear naked choke, this is a rear naked choke. This is a big difference. And this is a big thing that I have to stress with my students initially, because a lot of times, again, they just try to use their arm, and you want to turn that shoulder into it. Same thing with the guillotine choke. You're not just going under here, right? You're reaching through, and it's all like this weird uppercut kind of motion. And what happens is this allows us to go under, boom, and we slide through. And a lot of times I'll do this with a knife hand. I don't make a fist, because if you do that, it gets trapped. But you can get your hand and slide it up under the neck here, and then there you go. You got your depth, and then you can start to finish. Okay, and that'll be the tip number 1. Okay, just send the hand sailing through. Do not cinch up and get tight until you've gotten to the end, because if you do, your arm's gonna get bogged down because you start to like constrict. All right. The second tip that I'd share with you, the one that I see the most common, and this is the mistake I used to make all the time with the guillotine choke, would be if I got the depth, if I got the guillotine choke in any sort of fashion, I would just start to arch my back, right? So I go, ugh. Okay, and straight on, and that's not what you want to do. And I think, again, going back to the story I was sort of sharing in the beginning, I think we've all seen someone like going for a guillotine choke and all of a sudden the head pops out because they're straight on. We don't want to do that. When you finish a guillotine choke, it's always, you want to finish kind of at a side angle. You can finish it without it, but again, going back to like picture perfect textbook, right? We're going to twist our body a little bit. So along with grabbing whatever hand grip you want to use, right? Along with doing this, we're also going to be positioning our body. So if the person's head's here, my body's going to be positioned on an angle, not straight on. And this will allow me to really torque and tuck into the body. And again, going back to the idea of cutting off the carotids, if you think about it, if I had a good choke here, if I started arching my back, right? Is that cutting off the carotids? Probably not, right? You're just like sort of arching and sort of pulling in the person's neck, and that's not the goal. It's not to try to crank them. We're trying to choke them, make them go night-night, okay? So when you get under there, you go and you torque, and that's gonna put more pressure because we're gonna be pulling our thumb to our shoulder, and if that person's neck here, it's constricting, okay? So that would be the second tip for you. And then the last little detail, or I say tip I would give you, is when you drill your guillotine chokes, drill it very slow in the beginning and really find, since you're having trouble with it, really find what it feels like, okay? Because again, that's what we go off of. Eventually, that's what you go off of with jiu-jitsu, right? You feel someone do something and you do something, or you feel something and you go for it, right? So you really want to get the right feel for what it's like to have a really good, deep textbook guillotine, okay? Because what's going to happen is when you roll, that's what you're going to kind of search for. So you're in the middle of like all this crazy chaos of a roll and the scramble, and you need to know, you can't like, you know, mess around with it. You got to know instantly, do I have it, do I not have it? And so what you do is you get used to drilling and going really slow, finding the right feel, like, oh, I have it, I don't have it, you know, I'll squeeze, maybe I need to readjust, whatever. And so when you're drilling, do it perfectly. Do it nice and slow. Get the feel for it. Talk to your partner. Communicate to him. It's like, hey, is that a perfect choke? Is that a crank? No, it's a little cranky. Okay, let me adjust it a little bit. Is that good? Okay, that's good. That's what I'm going for. Perfect. So then you know exactly what you have to shoot for when you go into a roll or whatever, and you know exactly when to sort of, you know, press the gas pedal or let up off of it. Okay. So Jose, hopefully this helps you with your guillotine choke, brother, and good luck with your future tournaments.